Well, good evening and welcome to yet another edition of News Sources. This is the only show in town where your opinion counts and facts are sacred. This is News Sources. My name is Julie Masiga, and indeed this is where we give you a chance to voice your concerns about how your taxes are being put to use and to hold the government to account. News Sources starts now. My name is Julie Masiga.
Saa hizi tumeagiza vyakula. Saa ile chakula imefika, wanaanza kutuambia mbona hii chakula imefika haraka. Wale walikuwa wanataka chakula hii chelewe ndio wapate kazi gani?
Naona mkutano inaitwa Jubilee. Siku zake zinafika. Akishika unga na Teresa.
The Directorate of Criminal Investigations commences fresh investigation of abuse of office by Ms. Anne Mumbe Waiguru, former CS Minister of Devolution and Planning. The findings to be made public and appropriate action be taken against her if found culpable.
Right, it is now official that millions of Kenyans are likely to start turning up at their workstations well-fed, while those retiring to bed will do so on a full stomach. The government has reduced the cost of maize flour in an effort to stem the rising tide of a hungry nation. For 90 shillings, you can now get a 2-kilogram packet of unga. But the question is that enough?
That reality true, and in fact, the Kenyans were affected. We included by that high prices.
The government gave the African millers 100,000 bags of maize, which is only enough for 2 days milling. And then they give to the Asian millers the balance, which they are allocating yesterday 900,000 bags. So you can see we are getting only 10%, and yet we represent 60% of the grain milling capacity. So if the minister wants to bring the price down, he must obey the laws of the law of economy. And those laws are laws of supply and demand.
Right, welcome to News Sources. As I said earlier, and joining me tonight is Billy Mwiruri, who is a political journalist and, of course, co-host, but now on the panel, Dennis Onsarigo. Welcome, gentlemen. And we also have a special guest in studio, Kareke Mbiyuki, who is the Vice Chairman of the Agriculture Committee and the MP for Mara. He'll be contributing to this discussion, as it is a lot about agriculture and the maize crisis in this country. But, gentlemen, what are your thoughts about this? Let's start with that bite right there, where African millers are saying that they only got 10% of the allocation. And you will remember that the government said that all this maize was bought by private millers to begin with. So there's a bit of a confusion about who bought the maize and who's distributing the maize and who's getting the maize. Billy, what are your thoughts?
I think our government was having is under pressure from the public because the issue of unga was actually taking a very serious political angle. And what I can see is that this is just a stopgap measure. I think more needs to be done. And I think as one of the Mr. Kogoro was saying on the screen, that can only be done for two days or even under a week. So I think there is too much to be done for us to really experience any change. Because for me, the worry would be, for how long can this night of unga last? Yeah.
But Dennis, at least the government is trying to do something. There's a crisis. They're trying to sort it out. Isn't that enough?
This is a welcome move, Julie, if you look at it, because millions were asking when, not how. When are you likely to bring down the cost of maize flour? But again, there are other issues at hand at the moment. Other costs, other commodities are still experiencing very high prices in this country. Yes. So it is a welcome move for the government, but again, let's see how it goes going forward.
Julie, I think this is a temporary reprieve. And I think the bigger picture would be what agricultural economists have been complaining about. What is our policies on food security? I even read in the media today about Mr. James Nyoro, Dr. James Nyoro, who was a presidential advisor on food security. He was trying to say that there's nothing unique about importing maize. We have always done it. And then the question is this country unable to really produce enough maize? Yet we know that the Rift Valley and parts of Western are very good in that. I think there is something that is not really, has not been working working, especially in successive governments. And I think we need to really look at our policies again on food security.
Right, you raised a very good question there about food security, and I think now is a good point to engage Mr. Buki because he's actually on the Agriculture Committee, the Vice Chairman, and just to ask him, what is our policy, our food security policy in this country, and what is Parliament, as the legislator, trying to do to make sure that Kenyans don't face these kind of disasters over and over again? Mr. Honorable Buki?
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be hosted by KTN. And I would like to say that the Agriculture Committee sees to this particular matter in terms of the current challenges which is facing the country in terms of the food pricing. And you know the law of Parliament is basically to oversight what the executive is doing. But by and large, the bottom line to address the current challenges lies with the production of adequate food for our Kenyans. But we all need to be seized to the matter that the country has faced drought for almost 1 year, and the expected strategic food reserve, which the government was holding, was supposed to last up to May. But unfortunately, currently we had stockouts, and government had to come up with the strategic measures to ensure that the government is able to feed Kenyans in a timely manner. We also need to really appreciate that there are some challenges which the government has faced when it tried to roll out these food subsidy program.
So, Honorable Buki is saying there that the reserves were supposed to last until May. So they've actually gotten us till May, and now that's the end of that. Should we take these things at face value, or is somebody playing politics with Unga, Dennis?
I think this is, from where I see, this is poor planning from successive governments. And we live in a country where we are aware, we are alive to weather patterns. We live in a country where we have ministry that should be coming up with policies on how to run agriculture. We live in a country where we understand what is our food basket. We understand that in the Rift, we can get these tons of maize after this period of time. And we live in a country where we understand that 1 million people are facing starvation, like every other year. And this problem has been there since the year 2002, 1984 it was there. So successful governments, I think they have failed to put in place not only policies, but legislation to make sure that this thing is done and done with it. Yes.
So you say successive governments, meaning there have been different people, different Kenyans in those positions of power, Billy. So are we failing as Kenyans to understand how our country should be run?
I think there is gross irresponsibility on the part of some government officials, because it's like even when you are driving and then the car stops on the road, yet it was really showing that there is no fuel, or the fuel is going down. Or when you are in the house and you are doing your packets of maize, maize flour, you get to a point where you have even put the water on the jiko or the whatever, and then you find that the maize flour is over, and the process of cooking is. So I think there is a bit of irresponsibility as far as those people who manage our strategic grain reserve. I think it's not a coincidence that one day you wake up and there is no maize. I think this thing has been going down and down and down. And somebody either failed to take action or conspired with external forces to do business.
Right. Janice, and this is an election year, obviously. Is this Unga business going to become a key point in the general election?
It will be a big plank in these elections. But, I mean, the speed at which the government has moved to make sure this is done, then I think it has hit them in a very hard way. So there might be a ripple effect going forward as far as this Unga business is concerned. And again, you cannot silence cries out there that the cost of living has skyrocketed in this country. It's not only Unga; many other things have skyrocketed in terms of prices. So this is likely to be one of the major election issues going into August. Yeah.
Right, but staying with matters maize, Kenyans are questioning the source and the timing and the delivery of maize that the government now says was lawfully procured. The fact that the maize stock showed up at the port of Mombasa within days from Mexico is also under scrutiny. So the government claims the maize is from Mexico, but the ship IVS Pinehurst could not have sailed 17,600 kilometers to Mombasa in just a few days. Cargo from North America destined for East Africa takes the Mediterranean Sea route rather than the South African route, which is 18,200 kilometers long. Pundits claim that IVS Pinehurst engages in the blue economy, a term that refers to ships with cargo on the high seas, which are awaiting a chance to trade. Now, was this a crisis or was it a cartel venture?
People who are very close to the power and they knew this thing is forthcoming. So they arranged themselves and ordered for this cargo much earlier. So that such that by the time the cargo is almost docking, the vessel is almost docking, the law has already been passed.
Saa hizi tumeagiza vyakula. Saa ile chakula imefika, wanaanza kutuambia mbona hii chakula imefika haraka. Wale walikuwa wanataka chakula hii chelewe ndio wapate kazi gani?
Right, so I think I'll start with Honorable Kareke Buki, who, as I said, is the Vice Chairman of the Agriculture Committee in the National Assembly and the MP for Mara. The question tonight is, was this a crisis or was this a cartel venture? Honorable Buki, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, from where I sit, this was a crisis. And we all need to really appreciate that the country has faced the drought for the last 1 year. And according to the government projections, our current stocks were supposed to last up to and including this month of May. And from there now, the government decided to come up with a package on now to be able to address the skyrocketing food prices in the country. And the first measure which the government did was to zero-rate all the duties in regard to maize. And thereafter now come up with a particular package to subsidize the cost of maize. You realize that the government sat down with the millers and through the Cereal Millers Association, and they agreed that for the millers to be able to retail their maize at 90 shillings per 2 kg bag, then they need to secure maize at 2,300. And the government intention was not for government itself to bring in maize from outside, but to allow the private players, the millers, to be able to source maize from any part of the world and be able to bring it here. So to me, the end justifies the means, because at the end of the day, the government has found a solution to ensure that these issues of skyrocketed maize meal prices have been addressed. So let us not so much dwell on the detail, because as we are aware, we have businessmen who are out there waiting to do business with government. And we need really to appreciate the law of private players. And they realize that maybe there will be an opportunity in Kenya due to the food shortage. And at the time now, immediately the government related the duty. At the time now they brought in their maize. And out of the current subsidy, the government has managed now to reduce the cost of maize meal to the current 90 shillings per 2 kg bag.
Right, so Honorable Buki, they're saying that the end justifies the means, and it was an actual crisis. Dennis, I'll start with you. Do the ends justify the means, or?
Julie, depends how you look at it, but as it appears, this was a manufactured crisis, and I think industry players who sat out there had an idea, what Mheshimiwa is saying, that we were likely to run out of reserves. So they decided to create a crisis, and then you must give it to this country that we have brilliant brokers.
But if we're running out of reserves, then there is a crisis.
There was a crisis, yes. But it was the escalation of this crisis is what made this government to move in so fast and allow millers to, quote-unquote, import maize. But the speed at which this ship flew into the port of Mombasa, not sailing, the speed at it was flying low.
In your opinion?
In my opinion,
yes.
for it to get to the port of Mombasa and for us to offload this maize, it's pure madness. If you ask me.
Honorable Buki says that as soon as the maize was zero-rated, they jumped into action and brought the maize in. The
explanation from government is wishy-washy. It's neither here nor there. First they say this maize was coming in from Mauritius, then they change it to Durban, South Africa. There's something wrong out there. I mean,
are we always looking for what? Are we always looking for a problem or trying to be conspiracy theorists about what's happening? Maybe this was just above board the way it appeared.
No, I think some of us in the media also falling prey to the merchants of anti-government propaganda, because I think we are not really, we are really very much interested in the Mexico aspect to this maize, and I think the government has tried to really explain about the time taken between the time it was ordered or when the crisis set in and the time it arrived. I think they said it was coming from South Africa.
Well, they first said it was coming from Mexico.
Yeah, but we want to really mention the Mexico thing, and
we only mention it because that's what they said. Otherwise, we would not pay any attention.
Yeah, but again, when you hear something having different explanations from different quarters, it means there is also a problem in the flow of information.
Okay, it's a communication problem, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, do you think it's communication or
it's
did
not,
something
I mean,
fishy
government is very clear that at first they told us where this maize was coming from and then they changed it. And then they gave us the kilometers this ship was supposed to cover. Right. Communication did not come from the media. Communication came from the government.
Maybe let's ask Honorable Buki, as being on the Agriculture Committee, what is actually the official position and where did this maize actually originate from?
I think Kenyans are really splitting air about this particular thing. The government intention is between now and September this year to bring in 5 million bags. Why should we be so much keen on now that 1,000 metric tons has come in? We still have more capacity to bring in the extra 5 million bags so that the government can be able to take care of Kenyans between now and September.
But so are you saying
what are just coming is just a fragment, it's just a small fraction. And actually that is what now the government is really using to be able to roll out this particular subsidy program. So the government, in terms of bag, what has come in is around 300,000 bags. So we are still left with more than 4.7 million bags, which the government will be able to allow between now and September. So that's why Kenyans now, whoever want to do business, you can go to Australia, you can go to India, you can go to Zambia, you can go to Uganda, and try to source for maize and bring it in the country, so that the government now can be able to use these maize that have been brought in by the private players and subsidize it and be able to reduce the price downward. The most critical thing, and what the government has done, is to do a research across globally to ensure when you go to maize from Zambia, the estimated price will be this, landed price. And actually, they have come up with a consortium of KLIA, internal security, and all the government agencies to ensure that the private players does not really exploit the government initiative.
Well, interesting point to make the Honorable Buki, because it is now emerging that a company, Halbert Limited, which delivered the 29,000 tons of maize to the Mombasa port, has been around for some time. The company is linked to a 2004 maize scandal where it bought 1 million bags of maize from the government stock it had not intended to buy. The same company was at the center of yet another importation of maize scandal in 2002 when the country faced a similar maize crisis. 2 years ago, the same company was under parliamentary investigation after it was awarded a 6 billion shilling tender to supply fertilizer whose quality was questioned. Right, so go ahead, Honorable Buki. I can see you want to say something there.
Halbert is an international player. It's an international player which has been in the international market for a long, long time. This is the same company which supplied maize in South Africa. It has been doing business in this particular country. From where I sit, I'm only aware that it is this particular company which has supplied, which was given a contract by GOK to supply fertilizer on a 3-year forward contract, and which they duly executed. And our concern as the Parliamentary Committee of Agriculture was actually on the quality of the fertilizer which was brought in. And once all the certification were done, it was really realized that the fertilizer was of good quality. So let us appreciate that we have so many players out there. We have people who are keen to do legitimate business with government, and everybody, not unless you are really blacklisted. That's why a time now you can be able to say you are not allowed to do any business in this particular country. When all board is the one which sourced for maize from Mexico, then it sold this maize to Kitui maize millers. It sold the maize to Pembe even before it came to Kenya. So the companies which actually sold the maize now to GOK for the sake of the subsidy was the Pembe maize mill and the Kitui maize millers.
Well, that sounds, gentlemen, like a very convoluted explanation. It's a bit circuitous. And of course, everybody has a right to do business, but I believe the same company was actually accused of supplying fertilizer that wasn't exactly a quality product.
If you listen to Mheshimiwa, as far as they're able to supply maize, then don't ask how they got here. And he speaks about many other players in this industry, but from where I see it, it sounds like single sourcing. This company has been there since 2002, supplying the same commodity. They were in this business again, supplying fertilizer that had questionable quality. So it's neither here nor there. I think it's a policy of who gets what first, who is first in the market, who gets what tender at what time. Okay. You people are starving, so do you have maize or not? Why do you have to ask questions about what else do we need?
As
do you want to feed? Yes. Exactly. Do you want to feed? Don't ask how we got it.
And it's only 30,000.
Yes, it's only 30,000.
There's more coming.
Exactly.
For me, it is curious that every time, I think this is now the second time when the issue of a scandal about maize is coming in. And these things have come at a time when I think our deputy president is at a decision-making position. And I wonder how he deals with those issues when he goes back to the Rift Valley, where we are supposed to, because the 7 billion that is supposed to alleviate these maize shortage, I wonder I'm just imagining how much that money could have done with proper planning about improving our own production. Because I think this is an issue of production, lack of proper planning as far as production of our food is concerned.
Yeah, I think there are two issues. There could be lack of planning and preparedness on the part of the government, and also it's possible that somebody maybe has manipulated the situation. There is a crisis, but maybe somebody is milking it. That remains to be seen. But then again, maize has come down to 90 shillings in the supermarket. What about the people in rural Kenya, upcountry, who buy gorogoros and they don't go to Nakumatt or Uchumi or wherever? How does this subsidy actually affect their lives, Dennis?
As I said, let's address things up here. We don't much care about what happens down there. I mean, as I told you a few minutes ago, we had a crisis.
Yeah.
Government has stepped in. They have zero-rated maize flour. They have brought it down from 118 shillings to 90 shillings. Go to the supermarket, pick one packet, okay? The rest of you don't have anything to eat, you will wait for another day. That's how we do things in this country. And on a large scale, Julie, you must understand that 1 million people are facing starvation in this country. Yeah. The cost of living, yes, upwards. I mean, there's a feeling that the numbers will go up to 2 million in the next 2 or 3 years. So if there are no policies put in place and what we have are short-term measures to deal with what is likely to be a full-blown crisis going forward, then we're likely to dance on the same spot. We will have this crisis going.
Right. And
we'll have another 2 months, and then we'll open up the markets. We'll allow people to import in maize. We don't care about what is in the shelves. People have invested in this thing. People had bought maize from the market. Where if you have brought down the cost of maize flour, then what about the miller who bought this maize at a very high price? Right. We're going to sell him. People don't care about this.
Right, Billy, I know you want to say something, but we're still sticking with matters maize. And now the National Super Alliance has welcomed the move to reduce the cost of maize flour, but now says the cost of other basic commodities is still too high. NASA presidential flag bearer Raila Odinga says that Kenyans are tired of the Jubilee administration and that their days are numbered.
Bei ya unga, kodi ya nyumba, nauli ya matatu,
yote imepanda, sivyo? Sivyo? Wakati Jubilee waliingia kwa serikali, walisema tutapunguza gharama ya maisha. Wamepunguza? Wamepunguza?
Right, now that sounds to me like pure politics, Billy. What is your take?
I think the opposition will have to look for something else to use as a campaign subject or topic.
Yes.
Because I think on this one, the Jubilee government has really pulled the rug under the feet of the opposition. Because now, the issue here was unga and maize. Now they are now saying, now you have done this. They are now on what we call a fishing expedition.
But don't forget, food has failed very great empires. The issue of food and hunger has actually brought governments down in the past. So.
Yeah, and that's why I think the reaction by the government is superb. And I think it was the best way to deal with this, because I think within a week or two, I think things would have been different if this crisis was not sorted out. But I think for the opposition, they'll have to look for something else. This unga thing, I think, has started to crumble.
Well, I think I'll just bring in now Honorable Buki again there, and just talking about the high cost of living and the fact that maize has gone down, but other commodities, like Raila Odinga says, are still expensive. So what is the Agriculture Committee in Parliament, and indeed the government, doing to ensure that people can afford to eat and live?
Well, you realize that Raila Odinga is just playing politics with the issues of the scarce food in the country. And if you want to play politics, then we are also there to play politics. But the bottom line, it is what the Jubilee government is attempting to do in long term. Because the solution to all this current crisis, it is ensuring that we're able to enhance the food production in the country. And what the government is doing is to ensure that it has rolled out, because we have been relying, the government have been relying year in out on land-fed agriculture, which at the end of the day, it has not really been able to eradicate the current crisis which the country have been facing perennially. So what the government is doing is to ensure that it has pumped a lot of resources to ensure that you are able to roll out irrigation in various parts of the country. And by and large, this is the only way we are going to address the current food crisis. But you also need to realize, if you want to do irrigation, then you also need to do serious damming. You need to have dams to support the irrigation infrastructure, which the government has done. And that is what is happening in Garana, because the government has really projected that it will be able to put 1 million acres under irrigation. But unfortunately, River Galana can only be able to support around that 1,000 acres without the dam. And what the government was doing in terms of Galana was, first of all, to use the 10,000 acres as a model farm to test the technology, to test the high-yielding variety before the government is able to roll out in the next 1,000 acres and to the rest of 1 million acres. But before the government is able to do that, it is to ensure that it is able to construct dams across the country. The most unfortunate thing, it is the same NASA, led by Raila Odinga, who has been criticizing government when it is doing the damming. Look at what is happening in Rift Valley, Itali Dam. What is happening in the Northern Collector Tunnel. Raila Odinga's work is trying to politicize whatever noble project which the government has been attempting to undertake. But whether they politicize or not, the Jubilee government has always been very keen throughout this particular project. At the same time, you have seen what is happening in Duake. The entire project, which is supposed to take care of the lower Ukambani, politics are there. So, at the end of the day, the most critical thing, it is to ensure the government has addressed the cost of production in terms of irrigation. You have seen the government brought in the subsidized fertilizer to ensure that it has supported our farmers in lowering the cost of production. So these current crises have been caused by the drought because we have been relying on land-fed agriculture. But once we have been able to move out of land-fed agriculture, then all these particular things will happen. Look at sugar sector. The people who have been behind bringing down the sugar sector are the same people who are in CORD.
Right, Honorable Buki, I think I'll just have to interrupt you there. Very strong defense of the government that you've given, Dennis. Is this to be believed? Has the government done everything that it could do?
I mean, politics will always be for politicians, but I mean, the Member of Parliament here is on record 2-3 days ago asking the CS not to. It was against the importation of maize in this country. I don't know what has changed the last 3 days. And talking about Galana Kulalu project. I mean, if government was aware that the dam could only hold this amount of water, then why was it a big campaign issue as one of the biggest Jubilee projects? It was one of the pillars
of the manifesto.
Yes, of the manifesto. So if there was no feasibility study done about it, then they should have said we can only put 10,000 acres of land under crop, not lie to noble Kenyans that will put 1 million acres of land under crop. It's
right, Billy, we are talking about Galana still. Hold your horses. Because if there was a project that was meant to mitigate food shortages in the country, it was the Galana Kulalu project. The project has seen only 5,000 acres of land put under crop, and 7 billion shillings has so far been spent on the project, but more than 1 million people are still facing starvation. And the number is likely to rise in the coming years.
Walisema ati watanyunyisha mashamba maji ekari 1,000,000. Hadi sasa watawacha kutegemea mvua. Hadi watatumia mambo ya irrigation kuzalisha chakula, sio? Sio. Wakapeleka bilioni 20 kule Galana Kulalu. Hadi wanafanya na irrigation. Sasa kule mahindi ambayo amepata kila ekari moja natoa gunia 10. Kule Kitale ekari moja ni gunia 30 au 40.
Sasa ati walilima eka milioni 1 huko Galana. Hatujui hiyo mahindi ilienda wapi. Na juzi imetokea Mombasa. Na wanatumia pesa ya serikali ati kwenda ku-subsidize. Kazi yao ni kupora mali ya wananchi.
So mahindi ilienda wapi? What happened?
I think when I listen to Isaac Ruto, I think this propaganda thing also requires some facts. There is nowhere it has been said that Galana Kulalu is 1 million. The Jubilee government had said that it is planning, or it was planning, to have 1 million acres
under irrigation.
And I think people have never understood the Galana Kulalu thing. It was supposed to be a project implemented in phases. And I think what many Kenyans don't know is that a lot of work was supposed to be infrastructure. And that is what has been happening. Actually, the 5,000 acres were just at the beginning, but when I went there, it was about massive infrastructural work happening.
When you say infrastructural work, what were they doing?
Those, they require a lot of infrastructure in that farm. It's not. I'm even told that the problem is even where you store that maize. So this was supposed to be done in phases. There is nowhere somebody would have expected Jubilee to do 1 million acres of maize in under 3 years.
But you see, strictly speaking, Jubilee, JP might have 2 terms. So 1 term is at the end, and we only have 5,000 acres under crop. They have 4 more years if they get elected to figure out the rest of it. Will that be enough time?
I can admit that the project may not have met the expectations of the ordinary Kenyan. But I think work is already being done. And I think this is a long-term project. It was not supposed to be a 5-year Jubilee project term. Okay. So I think with the time, I think things would need to improve.
That's a fair point. But 2 questions now for Honorable Buki. One is a question that Dennis actually raised. Honorable Buki, you are on record being opposed to the duty-free importation of maize just a few days ago, and now you seem to have changed your tune. And secondly, how much did Galana Kulalu actually yield or not yield to the point where we're facing a crisis of maize?
I think I would like to put the record straight. That number 1, as a member of parliament, my work is first to represent the people. And when this crisis started, all Kenyans were extremely very anxious. On Friday, when the Agriculture Committee was in Mombasa, we expected to get some briefing from the Cabinet Secretary. And we realized that the Cabinet Secretary went to Mombasa, he received some maize which are just docked, but unfortunately he did not create time to come and brief the parliamentary committee on what the government was planning to mitigate the current crisis. And what we are doing as Parliament was to pose some questions to the executive and push the executive to be able to offer solutions. And as I sit here, I'm one of the happiest men that when we spoke loud and clear, the government acted very fast. It was able to come up with a very clear package, to be able to mitigate under the current crisis. And these are the results we are witnessing today. So I'm not really backtracking. All what we are saying is that when we met the Cabinet Secretary in February this year, he gave us an assurance that, yes, the country is food secure, and he gave us statistics. And he told us from May, then the government may be forced to bring in maize. And when we got into May and the maize was really flowing in, then as a Kenyans, we were equally worried. But as at yesterday, when the government wrote this particular program, at least it was a relief to many Kenyans. And now we can comfortably be able to say the government has really gone out of its way. But I also want to say, this is a package to address the issues of maize meal, to reduce the cost of maize meal from 150 to 90. And I believe the next step is from government now, because this maize, when it is being bought, it goes to the strategic food reserve. It is the same maize which now will be used as famine relief to be able to help the vulnerable Kenyans in the rest of the country. Secondly, the issues of Garana Kulalu. First of all, we need to appreciate the 10 million acres was actually supposed to be to test the various technologies, so that before the government is able to roll out the list of 1 million acres, we know the best technology to use, the best varieties which will be used, maybe for maize, for sugarcane, and for other food varieties. So Kenyans really need to know that the 10,000 acres which is being rolled out now, it was not really to be able to mitigate on the current challenges which the government is taking. It was a model farm to test technology, to test the best varieties, which later on will be rolled out. When the first crop was harvested, the government had planted 13 varieties. And on average, the best performing varieties was able to yield more than 40 bags per acre. The worst yielding varieties was able to yield around 5 bags per acre. And when they came to second phase of cropping, the government narrowed down to only 3 varieties, which is now able to generate, to produce around 45 bags per acre. And this is the maize which actually has been feeding coastal region. These are the maize which have been used to distribute, which have been distributed in Kilifi. It has been used in Tana River, in Kwale, and other particular areas in terms of relief. The government has also gone out of way to come up with a small model maize mill.
Honorable Buki, if you can just summarize and wrap up, we'd be happy to hear your final comments on this.
Yes, what I'm saying is that Garana Kulalu it is a model project, which once it has been successfully rolled out, then the government now is going to use the experiences in the model farm throughout in the other 1 million acres. Right. So let us give government an opportunity, so that it can be able to implement the Jubilee Manifesto, which I am 100% confident we are going to ensure that there is food security in the country. But as I summarize, the government needs to put a lot of resources. The way the government is able to put resources in the national defense, in the Kenya police, then it also needs to put a lot of resources in matters to do with food security, and specifically even in irrigation.
Right. Thank you so much, Kareke Mbiuki. You are the Vice Chairman of the Agriculture Committee and also the MP for Mara. Thank you for taking the time to join us on News Sources and share your views. But now, moving ahead, we have a Twitter poll question for you. And tonight we're asking you, do you believe the Jubilee government's explanation that it imported maize from South Africa? Do you believe the Jubilee government's explanation that it imported maize from South Africa? You